Welcome to Innovation and Leadership. I'm Jess Larson. Today on the show, we've got Alex Goryachev.
As you define innovation that way, you start to be able to include your entire workforce in that innovation, right? And that leads to inclusion and diversity. The second thing, it actually allows you to go and tackle many problems of the enterprise by not necessarily building a new product, but by just not doing a stupid thing.
Alex, did I pronounce your last name correct?
You did.
So tell people about what you do at Cisco.
So I run the Cisco's Innovation Centers, which are hubs of working with the ecosystems around the world. And then I look after a lot of our employee ideation programs. How do we get employees involved in innovation broadly?
Yeah. And so, Cisco's obviously a hugely well-known name in the communication space and technology space. But when it comes to the actual innovation projects and the different things you're doing, for people who maybe don't have as much visibility on some of that stuff, can you talk about some of the big wins or some of the more notable things?
Innovation is the ability for the company to constantly reinvent itself and meet customer challenges. If you look at Cisco, we've been in the business for over 30 years, pretty much starting a networking industry around the world. And today, if you look around the globe, more than 50% of the internet's traffic, it's going for Cisco's equipment. So obviously, every day we need to innovate to meet new challenges, right? Whenever that's customer demands for privacy or security or for basic connectivity. So obviously, being in such fast-growing industry and leading it requires a lot of innovation.
Sure. So there's so many folks that think innovation is, a lot more likely with two guys in a garage. Can you talk about things like overcoming bureaucracy? What do you guys have, like a $200 billion market cap or something, right? Like you're a significant organization. Can you talk about ideas and structures and how you can not get bogged down by size?
Sure. Cisco is over 70,000 people. And if you think about implementing the ideas, right? First of all, we want to distinguish between an inventor and an innovator, right? A couple of people can definitely invent something. A lonely innovator can invent something in a garage. Um, the issue is about scaling, right? And the issue is actually about building a quality product. And that's where I think large corporations, they can actually play a significant role. Um, Two reasons, right? The first one is inclusion and diversity, right? I know there's a lot of talk about inclusion and diversity. Um, Rarely people connected with innovation, but at the end of the day, if you look at that driver for new things, it's inclusion and diversity, because people that come from different backgrounds and with different experiences, different problems, different opinions, they are able to come up with new challenges and solve them very differently. So the one thing that large company allows you to do is tap into the employee base that's all over the world, right? And tap into the ecosystem players that's all over the world. So that's kind of the first thing, right? And the second one is about scale, right? So the when you look at the large companies, what they really know how to do well is scale, right? Is take an idea, productize it, and push it to market globally. So which obviously when you think about the two things that I just talked about, inclusion and diversity and ability to scale, that's certainly why a lot of startups want to work with Cisco, and at the same time, why a lot of employees want to work there, and because the company is that platform that allows them to bring their ideas to life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you think about folks who want to become more innovative in a larger organization, maybe they're a leader and they want to become more innovative, but maybe their old habits at the organization aren't necessarily set up to promote that. What kind of advice do you have for a leader like that?
Well, a couple of things. The one thing I would definitely advise them to do is to think what the innovation is about, right? Because a lot of somehow there is this belief system that innovation is actually reserved for select few, right? And many companies that I talk to, they believe that innovators are, I don't know, product teams, right? Um, there's often a confusion between innovation and invention. So the first step is redefining innovation. What's innovation, right? Innovation, it could be a new product, it could be a new process, it could be a top line growth, it could be a bottom line growth, right? It could be business improvement. It could be not doing a stupid thing, right? And when you think about, as you define innovation that way, you start to be able to include your entire workforce in that innovation, right? And that leads to inclusion and diversity. The second thing, it actually allows you to go and tackle many problems of the enterprise by not necessarily building a new product, but by just not doing a stupid thing or sunsetting a product or a process. I think that second step is essential as well, right? Um, and then I truly think it's about ensuring that innovation is not perceived as a project, right? I think innovation is a mindset. It's much like happiness. It's just an attribute of our natural well-being, right? I think people are innovative by since early childhood. I mean, I look at my 4-year-old son Matthew. If he can't solve a problem, he tries to solve it in many different ways. I think in the large companies, we either tend to do it alone, or we are just accepting reality and not challenging it by coming with new ways to do things. So bottom line, it's not about innovation. It's about creating a culture of innovators and getting everyone across the company involved with that new definition of innovation.
Well, and can you talk about what this looks like at Cisco, the innovation centers?
Right. So if you think about the innovation centers, that's where we primarily work with startups and academia around the world. If you think about Cisco, we've got presence in over 100 countries. And in 12 countries, we've set up innovation centers. Innovation centers allow us to partner with others, right? Customers, partners, resellers, startups, and academia. Um, what this really allows us to do is, let's say, bring a customer or have a customer problem, and then um, plug in a local startup, perhaps some university students, and then create a local solution that can be then sold in a country. So if I think about the kind of win-win for everyone involved, is it's a win for Cisco because there's a new market. It's a win for the country because there's a GDP creation and a job growth. It's certainly a win for a startup. If you think about it, they can get on a price list of Cisco with their solution and scale globally. And then it's obviously a valuable experience for university students, and the customer gets a product. So at the end of the day, we've set up the innovation centers in a way that A, it's about the ecosystem, B, it's about ensuring that we all can make money and create new opportunities. And I think that goes back to the core Cisco philosophy that no single company can do this alone, right? It truly, especially in the world that we live in, it takes a village. Nobody can typically own things end to end, and tapping into the work of others and co-innovating with others leads to phenomenal results.
Yeah. Well, and these seem like pretty fun cities to visit if you're the managing director and you get to go around to Barcelona and Paris and Rio and Tokyo. Um, any stories that come to mind as that you felt really proud of or that you felt like were a real success?
Speaking about the travel, right? I honestly, again, I mentioned the 4-year-old, right? I wish I could travel a bit less, but you're absolutely right. Last week I was in Paris and London. Actually, 2 weeks ago, last week I was in Tokyo. I think, the first thing, I truly enjoy my job because at the end of the day, it's helping startups and passionate people with ideas. And second thing is solving customer challenges. The one thing that I'm really proud of is just somehow we keep connecting the innovation centers to Olympics. I actually just came from Tokyo, where I was talking about how we can help Japan's entrepreneurship. What are the programs that we can run in the country ahead of Olympics? Tokyo 2020. We've done the same thing in Rio de Janeiro. We've got the same thing in London, and we're going to do the same thing in France. So the bottom line, it's when you think about the innovation centers, it's in a grand scheme of a 70,000 people company, it's a very small effort. But the amount of impact that it has on the local country and the society and ability of local companies to go and scale globally is truly phenomenal, and that's where I get a lot of satisfaction from my work.
Yeah. You know, looking on the website and seeing these interesting things, like it looks like you've got a small microchip attached to a bee for like a radio telescopes or something.
Yeah, we want to save the bees, right? So actually, in Australia, um, we work with a variety of partners, and the one on the bee project is with the company called, or actually a nonprofit in Australia called CSIRO, where what they really want to do is understand the migration, the patterns of bees, and obviously that leads very tightly into agriculture. And if you think about Australia, if you look at the country, that obviously pops in your head that just about how much agriculture they do. So, so in Australia, we partnered with Federation of Farmers, CSIRO, and a number of other nonprofits and companies to go and create solutions for that industry. Uh, which kind of highlights the two other points that I want to make for the innovation centers. Um, it is typically a multi-party environment, right? I talked to you about the inclusion and diversity as a driver for innovation. And we practice what we preach. So it's typically a consortia of multiple companies. And at the end of the day, what we'd like to do is focus on the problems that we see in the country, right? So if you think about, or opportunities, right? If you think about Australia and agriculture, it's a vast amount of land and it's not connected, right? And certainly being connected with the Internet of Things, being enabled by a network allows you to do all sorts of things, from crop management to livestock management. And I think again, what's fascinating is finding all those new use cases for technology.
Yeah. Do you remember? Do you remember any specifics about that project, or is there a project that was extra interesting for you to follow as they hit the bumps on the road and then ultimately succeeded?
Well, honestly, I think every single project um, that we do at the Innovation Center, it hits a bump on the road, right? I think it's certainly of interest to the listeners that we divest from probably 50% of the projects that we start, right? Um, Sitting in between of the ecosystem and the large company, uh, you want to make sure that you have the right ecosystem partners, and then the business opportunity is sizable enough for a multi-billion product company to go and listen to you. But there are a couple of examples that come to mind that are truly fascinating. We used to run in a work competition for startups every year, and I remember about 3 years ago in Dubai, we ran an IoT innovation challenge, and we were looking for a company that has smart building management platform. And there was a little team from Germany, two people. That's how many people they had working with their idea of just it's a sensor based idea on listening to different temperature status of the building. It's about a building control, and we were just so fascinated with their commitment and drive and everything. They won. honestly, I don't believe that they won a first or second prize, but the minute they won the prize, we're like, let's go do something together. What we did is we looked in Germany, and we've paired them with an employee in Germany named Mitko, and said, Mitko, can you help mentor that company? And Mitko knew something about IoT. Um, and just as a side comment, we do a lot of that. Our employees are passionate about getting involved with the community, so we ask a lot of our employees to mentor startups. So Mitka worked with that team for a while. Cisco liked their product. We actually implemented it in our innovation center in Berlin as a building management software. Fast forward, Cisco invested in a company. Company grew big, and I think it literally 3 weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, it was acquired by another company. So again, that's when you see somebody with an idea and with the right set of resources and commitment to go just in the 2 years to go from, hey, I have a friend and we have an idea, to we're actually a company with a significant market cap that's being acquired, right? So I think that's the fun story, because it really allowed us to go and touch every single aspect of that business and help them be successful. And along that, along the way, we've managed to sell a lot of Cisco product because they've built something on top of Cisco. So again, win-win for everybody.
So, in your mind, when you think about this, it's kind of a venture capital esque, related things in certain ways, but different in other ways. What kind of guidance do you have for large organizations that want to learn from your success of, make sure to avoid this or make sure to do that?
I think it's being very I think it's about accepting the reality of their company and being laser focused about what they want to do. Right. I go to a lot of innovation conferences, and then it's a lot of fun because it's like group therapy, right? And there are a lot of people that are saying, "Hey, I want to change my 70,000 people company. I want to disrupt it." I'm not saying that's always possible. I think understanding your environment is the my number one advice. Um, my second advice is by enabling innovators in the company and innovators in the team. I often see a lot of companies that create a special innovation teams, and obviously, I mean, personally, I don't think that's always a good idea, right? Because you create two classes of employees: innovators, people with budget that are working on the future, and people that are just working on common stuff, right? That are not innovators. So I think many companies are better off by establishing more of a facilitation team, because if they look around, there are plenty of innovators in their company and plenty of people that actually have great products, and they just need some help and facilitations and operation help and hand holding to get it off the ground. Um, and maybe, last, there could be a lot of advice depending on what we talk about, but what I'm seeing is typically a lot of technology innovation, right? We have people that are engineering products. As you know, when you work with engineers, one of the primary questions is not can it be built, but should it be built? So I think getting more people from like business development and marketing and sales involved with engineering and involved in this innovative process really would help um, define the market requirements and capture that market opportunity earlier. Because I often see technology that's trying to find a market, while we have plenty of market opportunities that needs technology to be built.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk more about this. I know we're about out of time for the first half of the interview here, but we'll talk more about this on part two. Maybe to end off, we'll ask what's kind of been my favorite question lately, which is if you could go back and give a younger version of yourself some advice, what would that be?
Yeah, I look at younger version of myself every day, right? With my 4-year-old son. So I do a lot of thinking about how, um, do I want to be young again, right? How would this impact my life and things like that. But at the end of the day, I think um, the older we are, the more we realize that there are many things that we don't know. And the advice to younger myself in this particular field would be to just to be more open to possibilities of things changing. Right? I remember um, 20 years ago, right, or maybe 18 or so. I was working for the coolest company on earth, or what I believe was a coolest company on earth at the time, was called Napster. And I remember it was almost the day before Christmas. I was in my uh, parking in front of my house, and I got a call from a recruiter, and they wanted me to go and run operations in a very small company in downtown Palo Alto called Facebook. And I remember I was so arrogant. I lectured that recruiter about the fact that A, I work for the coolest company on earth, and B, there's nothing new in social media because MySpace exists and doing well, right? And I remember I was so convinced. I'm like, oh my God, let me tell you about the world, right? And I look at this. It's not about the opportunities that I've missed. I'm really happy about where I am and what I'm doing. But it's just about being open to possibilities, right? Um, I just learned the other day that Coca-Cola believe that they never will be sold by from bottles, right? They believe that it's a fountain drink only, right? So seeing into the future and questioning reality or your perception of reality is an essential skill.
I love it. Well, everybody, please tune back into part 2. We're going to be asking Alex more of these kind of questions.